This podcast contains open conversation about eating disorders, body-related issues, and may include triggering language. I'm not a medical professional, just someone who has personally navigated these experiences and wants to create a space for open and compassionate dialogue. If this isn't the right time for you to listen, take care of yourself and come back whenever you're ready. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bite Size Stories. I'm Giorgia, and this podcast was created to explore the complex relationship we have with food, body image, and health through honest, lighthearted, and meaningful conversation. In today's episode, we're going to talk about misleading beliefs around food, supplements, and food safety. How do we make sense of what is actually good for us? And how do certain eating behaviors affect our body? And what does science actually say about that? Let's find it out together. Today, joining me is someone who has spent the last 20 years behind the scenes of what we eat. So welcome, Dom.
Great to be here.
So tell us, what brought you to the food industry?
Yeah, well, I'm a long way from home. I started my journey in Australia. I guess I grew up seeing some of the difficulties that my father had with digestion and things like that. And I didn't experience the same thing. So I was always kind of curious about food from a very early age. I think because of that, I also had quite a varied diet growing up. My parents were very, interested and researched about what to eat and that sort of thing, which led me to study food science when I went to college. And since then, I've been working in food and nutritional products in Australia, China, Singapore, and now the US.
That's interesting. And I think you're going to give us a lot of amazing insight today in today's episode. Because, I feel like today a lot of people struggle with understanding what is good for them to eat. And on the other side, I think people are surrounded by a lot of misinformation and, from the media, from influencers, from people who are trying to tell you what is good without understanding what's behind. So what's actually good for you, not good for like everyone in general. And so I think that's the reason why people sometimes know a lot about food and dieting, but at the same time, they get really confused. So let's break some of that down.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, food is just such an interesting topic. It affects obviously every single animal on earth. And we have an emotional attachment to food. So we're going to feel emotion about what we eat and what we put in our bodies. And yet it's so important for our survival and our health and our well-being and our mood and everything else that we experience on a day-to-day basis. So it's just so integral to the existence as a human. And yet our education in food is really quite basic, I would say, compared to where it needs to be for the general population to make informed, intelligent choices about.
So you mean that there is a basic information because there are so many informations out there?
Well, let me give you an example.
Yeah,
Right?
thank you.
What did you study at high school about food?
I would say practically anything. I think
maybe how to cook something, or maybe a little bit they tell you about the food pyramid or the food plate, about a balanced diet or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Like that food pyramid is something we all see like at school. And maybe sometime people study, something about proteins, like how to process protein in your body. But to be honest, I don't remember any of that.
Right. And I think that's the real problem, because as an adult, we're inundated with information about food and what to eat. And here's this new food that's somehow is on the market today that no one heard about 20 years ago, but it's supposed to be a cure for everything. And there's just so much misinformation, or it's not always incorrect, but it has a purpose of selling a product as opposed to being what's actually good for you. And I think really, what I would like to see change about our relationship with food as adults is, education very early on in childhood. And what I think about in that context is, imagine if, every month from when you were 6 years old until you were 18 years old, you were exposed to a different food type and you were told a little bit about that food type as you were growing up, and you could taste it and see it and understand where it comes from. I think that's how to build that interest and education level in the population with our relationship with food, so that people really understand where it comes from, what it's made of, and why we need such a varied amount of different things in our diet.
That's a really good point, and I think you're totally right. Maybe if that was shared with kids since they are younger, maybe they would really understand and build their own knowledge instead of counting on the knowledge of someone else. Which, yeah, most of the time, as you said, it's just like to sell the product instead of educating people or understanding how that food is gonna impact in the body.
The other part to it is, imagine how many school kids, just because of what their family eats, don't get exposed to the wide variety of foods that exist in the world, and they may maybe never have tried broccoli. I mean, it sounds crazy to us that have, but there's probably people out there that just didn't have it growing up.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on like a lot on your household and so on. It's like food is an habit.
It becomes a habit.
Yeah, it is an habit. So you need to train that habit in accordingly, just like experiencing all the nutrition you need like into your body. To be honest, like if I can bring up a little bit of my experience on that, I would say I would consider myself one of those people who at the same time is very interested in nutrition, in trying to understand what's good for me. But at the same time, I get a huge bias by be just like bombarded by information that I read like everywhere. So it's very, very difficult for me. I think another thing that is very difficult for people to understand, it's actually what kind of effect a certain food have into your body. And that's a topic I really want to bring up because it's something that I often hear from people. And together with that, I'm gonna share a little bit of my story because I want to ask you your opinion on that, because it's something that belongs to the past, but it's something that I know a lot of other people are doing without being fully conscious on the consequences that now I live in my body. So basically, during one of the periods of my eating disorder journey, I had, of course, compensatory behaviors, which is pretty common in eating disorders, in some of the eating disorders. But in that period of my life, what I did, it was changing them. And what I did was, after eating something that I didn't want to eat, for example, like after, overeating maybe something, I would make sure to eat expired food, spoiled food, or just like absurd combination of food that would make me sick. And I think back then I wasn't fully conscious of the consequences that would have on my body. So you perfectly know, you are a food scientist, and I think you're gonna be able to explain some of that.
I mean, first off, I'm sorry you went through that. It sounds like it was a really tough time for you.
It's right. It's period of the life that people can go through it. People can, just turning chapter.
Just to circle back, right? Because I think it's important to paint context about some aspects of food that just get missed in common knowledge. Our food that we eat and bacteria, they're so interrelated in many ways. Before we had food processing and before we had things like pasteurization, which really only started becoming common around 100 years ago.
And I think people, sorry to interrupt you, but I think people are often very scared of the word like processed food.
Right.
Is it? Yeah.
And yeah, it's sort of part of what I'm, getting to here is that we've been able to save so many millions of lives, really, over the course of the last 100 years, just through food processing. Because prior to that, before we had these processes that were standardized, measurable, traceable, food was as good as whatever the local person could make it. And they didn't understand enough about microorganisms and bacteria and these sorts of things. At the same time, we use microorganisms to make food as well. And if you think about it, food is food and it feeds us, it feeds other living things, just like microorganisms. And that is technically like a form of processing. And we've been doing that as a human race since before we had the wheel, before we had civilization. We were producing these fermented or microorganism infused foods, right? And
that's crazy to think about it,
yeah,
by the
like
way.
we don't think about that.
Processing food before having the wheel.
Precisely. I mean, baking bread, you're essentially, you're fermenting the bread, the wheat, and then essentially you're baking it, which helps preserve it, which keeps it for a longer period of time, which makes it safer. It kills any pathogens or nasty microorganisms that might be present there. So it allows humans to, become, for the population to increase and for us to consume food safely for many, many, days after it was originally sort of sourced or produced, right? Those things changed the human race permanently. Now, the counterpoint to that is that it's also risky in the same way. If you have certain foods that grow these good bacteria very well, they can also grow these bad bacteria. And that's where, when I hear your story about your relationship with food during your issues, it just makes me very concerned for anyone that would be going through the same thing, because they could inadvertently, without knowing it, be growing very, very dangerous bacteria and yeast and molds in their food that they're about to consume. And it's easy to think of food poisoning. Okay, you eat something that may be off and maybe you feel sick or you vomit or whatever for a little while and then you get better. Well, that doesn't always happen. People do still die from food poisoning today. And now it's much, much rarer than it used to be because of food processing and because of food control and manufacturing of food.
In short, what is the effect of the bacteria, the good bacteria? Like why do we process food? Like, apart like from preserving food, but why do we process so much food right now?
So I think just to talk about that word processing a little bit as well, because I think it's when people hear that word and the way that it's sort of used in the media is that all processing is bad. Well, that is simply not true, right? You cook food at home on the stove, you're processing a food. You're modifying it chemically in a way that results in a different outcome, right? When you cook meat, which we've been doing for tens of thousands of years, you're essentially denaturing proteins. You're breaking down the protein a little bit so it's easier to digest. At the same time, you're killing microorganisms that could harm you. So you're making a safe, easier to digest food. Now, where processing takes things too far is when what we've done as an industry and as a population is we've tried to make food extremely cheap. Now, food should be affordable, of course, but buying very, very cheap foods tends to mean that it's done at a large scale. It means that it uses a lot of carbohydrates and sugars because they're cheap and they taste good and they provide volume, right? So there's a big difference between cooking a steak and, eating Fruit Loops, let's say. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it's just the words scare people because they don't know what it means.
Processed, yeah.
Right?
Because it feels like something chemical.
Yeah.
And I think we live in a generation where people are kind of like want to go back to what is not chemical, but what is natural, like very bio. That kind of brings us to another topic that I think it's very important, and it's the one of food safety. I think there is a huge concern also in food safety right now, especially when we talk about meat. People are concerned about, the safety of the meat, if the meat is cheap, if the meat is expensive, like how the quality changes. And also, for sure, you've heard that right now there is a big thing with seed oil. Don't use seed oil in your kitchen because it's bad. So what do you think about that?
So what I see happen a lot is I see companies try to tell everybody what's not in their food. And it's created this mindset that avoidance of certain things is the way to be healthy, right? The reality is that everything is okay in moderation for the most part, right? Within reason, of course. But there's not too many foods that you can't eat to some degree in some small quantity if you really want to, that you can't manage. Our bodies are excellent at taking in all of the different things that we eat and consume and then breaking it down and letting us live with that. I mean, I think where the food industry's got it wrong and where people are influenced in the wrong way is picking up a package of food and seeing it doesn't have any seed oils, it doesn't have any gluten, it doesn't have any lactose, it doesn't have any dairy, it doesn't have all these things. No, 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 no. What we should be doing is trying to eat as many different things as we can. We need to fuel our bodies. We should be trying to include as many things as we comfortably can in our diet, right? Of course, there's going to be sensitivities and allergies that we need to take into account. If you're allergic to something specific and your doctor has diagnosed that, then you should probably avoid it. But at the same time, I think we've gotten into this habit of just trying to eliminate so much from our diet that A, we're missing out on some amazing foods, but B, we're not really solving a problem, because a lot of these things exist in moderation if you have the self-control to eat a reasonably balanced and varied diet. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of people, is just finding ways to eat a high variety of foods.
I think all of that confusion, it's like all rooted in the fear that we have about certain ingredients. Cutting this, cutting that, and feeling this like need of detoxing yourself and cleaning it yourself. I think it's also very connected to another habit that a lot of people have right now. And it's just like inserting those nutrients from other stuff, which is not, for example, meat, because I'm scared about meat. It's not dairy because I don't want to eat dairy. And so I try to insert those vitamins or those nutrients into my body in another way. And of course, right now, I'm talking about the supplements and multivitamin industry,
Right.
which is an emperor backed up by money. I feel like people are increasingly obsessed by food supplements, multivitamins, when they don't really fully understand what are the if they are really needed.
What the supplement industry tries to do is to continually find new ways to sell you something, right? And how do you do that? Well, you don't want to sell a multivitamin that has all the vitamins and minerals that are contained within one pill. Well, you split that up. Let's make that 10 pills, and then we can sell them 10 pills instead of one, right? It's
Why
that
not?
simple. I mean, like for a long time, Centrum had this multivitamin that had everything in it, and they had one for men and one for women, pretty similar, by the way. And that had everything of these micronutrients that you needed. And then I think the industry went, well, that's not going to really make us more money next year. How do we keep the shareholders happy? Well, we sell a calcium supplement, we sell a vitamin D supplement, we sell a magnesium supplement, and you just go to the pharmacy shelves, have a look at how they've just taken all of these things and broken them up into pieces. And then the next step in the supplement industry was finding new things, because new things sound cool. And if it's new and there's new research behind it, let's say, whether it's legitimate or not, it's going to sell to the right people, right? And partly it's because if you take something from nature that is safe and harmless and you put it in a high enough concentration and it has some, let's say, antioxidant effect or something you hear these buzzwords about, right?
Yeah.
And then you do a study where you give someone 10 grams and you give the other people 0 grams, and then anything that's different about those people that have taken 10 grams, you say, that's because of my supplement, right? And here's my study.
Yeah.
Science doesn't work like that. Science, builds a body of evidence over time and steers towards a direction where the majority of evidence would have us look, right? But you can cherry pick science to tell a story, to sell a product in many, many different ways. And that's what a lot of these companies do, is they will run a study that is not practical. You're not going to ever eat that amount of that particular compound in real life every day for 20 years, right? It's just not going to happen. But if they can run a study to show something has happened if you do.
But what you're saying is that when we buy those pills that will magically correct us, there is not actually that amount
there's
of
no magic
product
cure.
that is gonna help us.
There's no magic cure, right? I mean, if there was, we would know about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things on the market that claim to do this and this and this, and the majority of them are just completely not true, right? They may have some minor impact, but they're not going to outweigh your hamburger and your steak and fries that you've had every day for the last 20 years, right? It's very hard to fix yourself nutrition with anything but nutrition, with anything but food and real food. Right?
Exactly. Actually, Harvard School of Public Health state and a lot of other trusted organizations stated people don't need food supplements if they have a balanced nutrition.
Right.
And
it's true.
I fully believe that now. Now I fully believe that.
But what's easier, eating balanced nutrition and having all the different vegetables and meats all the week, or just taking a pill?
Of course not. Like if I can eat whatever I want and then I take like this gummy bear saying, your glucose spike is going to go so down with this gummy bear. I'm going to go for a gummy bear, like for sure. But it's important to realize that it's not that true.
Yeah.
It's not that true. And for some reason, like the food supplement industry became such a huge thing. Just to let you understand, the supplement industry is projected to reach $327 billion globally by 2030. And it's helped and backed up by viral trends, food influencer, media selling. It's all about that. It's all about a trend. And that's scary because, of course, people are very influenced by that. And I don't want to talk like I'm not influenced by that. Of course I am. Now I understand more. I used to be one of those person that every time I saw a new supplement, I thought like I want to try it. I want to try it. And I spent so much money on that. And I think people spend so much money on that. And we are contributing to that.
If someone's trying to sell you something, they're probably lying to you. It's that simple. Like they're misusing the truth, or they're cherry picking science to prove a point. And it's very hard to prove them wrong unless you're going to spend all your day researching, which we just don't have time to do, right? One of the things with supplements as well is that we tend to take a supplement when we've decided already to make a conscious decision to do something healthy, right? So you may, let's say you wake up with a hangover or something like that, and you're like, oh, I've got to get healthy this week. I'm not drinking for the next few weeks or something like that. I just got to dry January,
detox.
Right?
Detox.
Detox. And then you also at the same time start taking a supplement and you're sleeping better and you're, feeling better, you're exercising more. But maybe it's not the supplement, it's just a complete lifestyle change.
Yeah, exactly. But talking about detox, there is, I think, okay, when people talk about detox, there is one food categories in the specific that people think about at first when they think they want to clean themselves or lose weight, which is like a popular goal. And the food category I'm talking about are carbs. Do people actually need to be so scared of carbs? Do people actually need to cut carbs to detox, lose weight, or have a better nutrition?
Sure. That's a great question because I think we're told a lot of information about carbs, which is correct. And a lot of it that may lead people to make bad decisions if they take it too far, right? There's basically three what we call macronutrients, three main things in food. There's the macronutrients and the micronutrients. In those macronutrients, we have carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Those are the main three things that are in food. Everything else tends to be micronutrients, your vitamins, minerals, and a few other bits and pieces, right? So carbohydrates are an important part of food. They're in most foods to some degree. It's very hard to completely eliminate carbohydrates, and the term carbohydrates applies to a wide range of things. It's sugar, but it's also fiber, right? And this is where I think things get confusing because people see maybe if they are, looking at the labels on food and they see carbohydrates and they assume it's bad. Well, really what nutritionists and what people are trying to tell others to do is to reduce the amount of simple sugars. By cutting out sugars, what you're doing is you're reducing the amount of calories you're taking in, right? And that's the main thing that leads to weight loss, by the way.
So what's the smartest way to cut calories, to lose weight, still having a balanced nutrition?
Yeah. So what the carbs you want are the carbs that you find in vegetables, right? When you're eating whole, and when I say vegetables, I don't mean that they've been juiced and squeezed into, something. I mean whole vegetables, because you really want to be taking in, all of the structure of those vegetables as much as you can anyway, right? Of course, you peel your potato and you eat the potato, but it's not the same as juicing a carrot. You still want to get that flesh that is in the carrot as well, right? And and the carbs that come with that includes a wide range of things. It has some sugar, but it also has a lot of beneficial carbohydrates and things that help your gut bacteria to grow as well. People are fighting this battle between convenience and cost and the actual nutrition we need, right? And you just can't shortcut it. The same thing happens a lot when you mention detox and people talk about juice detoxing.
Yeah.
It's BS. It's not going to do what you think it's going to do. Mixing your diet, eating lots of different things from lots of different places, and you're just reducing your risk to any one particular source of a problem. I hope I answered your question on carbohydrates there.
Yeah.
I think, it's such a big topic and it relates back to.
But you kind of answered. So because there is like risk wherever we turn, the way to avoid the risk is just picking like a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Wholesome.
And reducing the risk of only one ingredient.
Correct. Yeah.
And so let's play a quick game now.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes, ready.
All right. So I'm gonna throw some trendy nutrition buzzwords to you, and you're just gonna tell me, is it legit or it's a total BS?
Okay, I'll try.
Collagen supplements.
BS.
Chlorophyll water.
BS. I can just tell from hearing those two words put together.
Celery juice detox, we were talking about it before.
Yes.
Seed oil damages your health.
Seed oils are fine in small amounts.
Apple cider vinegar shots.
Oh, BS. BS.
Mushroom coffee.
I mean, if you like it, eat it, but it's not going to do anything.
I don't drink it, by the way. Water with lemon and ginger in the morning. What do you say?
I mean, it sounds tasty, but it's not going to do a lot for you.
It's not burning my belly fat, no?
No, I mean, if you don't eat breakfast and you just have that, then you're probably not taking in many calories.
Intermittent fasting.
This is legit, but why it works is often misconstrued. The reason intermittent fasting works is that you just eat less calories, and it's an easy way to eat less.
A lot of people say that intermittent fasting also works with the moon cycle. I used to do that like that, like in full moon. I would say, okay, I'm not eating.
Oh, wow.
Keto diet.
The science behind the keto diet is not incorrect, but you don't need a keto diet to be healthy or to lose weight.
Oat milk instead of cow's milk.
Almond milk, cashew milk, all these things, they often are nutritionally less interesting and less robust than dairy milk.
No sugar protein bars.
You're cutting out calories. Protein is great.
So kind of legit.
It's kind of legit.
Let's say
Yeah,
kind of
that's
legit.
fine.
Probiotic sodas.
So there's probiotic sodas and there's prebiotic sodas. Probiotics means it comes with bacteria. Prebiotics means it comes with carbohydrates that feed the bacteria that are already in you. You're better off just avoiding soda.
Drinking olive oil shot, BS or legit?
It's not going to do much for you, but if you like it, go ahead.
Who likes it? So let's say
Yeah.
BS. Last one, protein ice cream.
Love it. Love ice cream. If you can put some
I do
protein in
too.
there, great.
I do
So-
too. So that's legit. Oh, that's
look,
legit.
That's legit just because I like ice cream.
So Dom, thank you for playing with me. And I have one last question for you today, which is going to be very helpful for people. I want you to just, go for it shortly and tell us. When do you go to grocery shopping? How do you choose between one product and another one?
Great question. When I go to the grocery store, I'm looking for density in the foods that I consume. And what I mean by that, I mean nutritional density. So I'm looking for things that contain a reasonable balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrates, as well as are in as natural a form as possible. I'm a big fan of dairy products, as I mentioned, but yogurts, cheeses, these are great. Meats, both, raw meat that you cook at home, but also cured meats, these sorts of things. I also love cashews, nuts, any sort of seeds like that you eat in a whole form. For breakfast every day, I make my own granola cereal. So I would say when you go into the supermarket, don't sacrifice nutritional density and things like that for saving a couple dollars on what you're going to eat all week. You should invest a little bit more money and a little bit more effort in the foods that you're buying so that you get the best possible nutrition out of your dollar.
Well, let's say the advice is put some effort in what you're buying. And
100%.
I think I agree on that.
I would say every time you go to the supermarket, why don't you try and find a food you haven't had before that looks interesting?
That's an amazing advice.
Right?
That's
like,
an
just
amazing
try
advice.
some new things. We have access to so much stuff. Try new things.
Yeah.
Try and see what you can include in your diet instead of what you can exclude.
So I think that's a good line to close with. And thank you, Dom, for being here today and for all your amazing insights. I swear I'll pay more attention when I go to the supermarket. And for all of you listening, thank you for joining this episode of Bite Size Stories. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend, leave us a comment, share your story, and follow us on social media, YouTube, and all the podcast platforms. And I'll see you next time for another episode of Bite Size Stories.